Welcome to the latest edition of Leadership, actually.
Yeah.
It's not love, it's leadership.
It is.
This is the messy class to help leaders be that little bit better. Welcome, Lisa Powney.
Welcome, Lee Rogers. And today I'm not going to ask how the devil are you, because just before we started, you said you'd been electrocuted 3 times. So I've saved a pow for this podcast. Tell us, how have you been electrocuted 3 times? That's why you're so
Well,
energized.
Yeah, it must be. Well, I always say, yeah, I'm doing really well.
Used to be therapy, you know.
Honestly, I am not the brightest tool in the shed when it comes to DIY, I think it's fair to say. And sometimes I forget to turn the mains electric off when and I always sort of go prodded, and I've just been bolted and ended up.
Oh my lordy.
And there was one time when I was mowing the lawn, and it was one of my first girlfriends at her house, and they'd had a cut in the wire, so they'd rejigged it. So I went to put it on,
Yeah.
and it was a dodgy, like, whatever they'd done with this connection. Next thing I knew, I was in hospital, but apparently I jolted over the lawn.
No way.
As I'd done this thing, and it
There we
so yeah.
It's not done you any harm. You're all right then.
That's debatable. I had many people would say, but I live to tell the tale. So
Yeah,
maybe
you
I'm a
do.
cat.
3 times, I think you are. You've got another 6 lives to go.
Well, thanks for that start. How are you doing?
I'm really well. I haven't actually, touch wood. I've never been electrocuted. We don't start that. But I am a disaster area like you. So I think we started this because we got the coffee pot stuck in the coffee machine, and I was trying to take it out with a spoon. So I was wondering if I would get electrocuted. So that's how that story started. But all is good. All is good. I've had a few nice sessions actually where it's filled my cup up this week, so I've really enjoyed it, and kind of a really lovely L&D lab networking group which I've really enjoyed. And we talked about joy, because it was this time of year and what brings us joy and what might get in our way, and it was a really good conversation. And I joined a new social activity club, we'll call it.
Okay.
But the way that it was run has taught me quite a lot about how, because we facilitate quite a lot of sessions, the welcome was brilliant, it was really warm, there wasn't any awkward moments, there was activities going on, and, I had a really good time, and so, yeah.
So it wasn't a forced energizer that everyone hates.
Yeah,
Oh,
and
right.
and so none of that. I learnt lots of stuff, so they had a really good activities that I will pinch. I was going to say them, but I'm pinching them, so I'm not going to say them out loud.
Still with pride.
Definitely. Have you had a good couple of weeks?
Yeah, full on. There's lots in the pipeline. It's exciting times. We were saying with our guest earlier that it really ramping up.
Yeah.
And everyone's just ready for a bit of a breather. I can't believe we're in series 3.
No.
It's a bit mind blowing,
It is.
even still, but so excited for today. And I say that often, but I just love the guests that we have on the podcast.
Yeah, chosen for
Yeah.
a reason.
Absolutely. So, without further ado,
Yeah.
let's welcome our esteemed guest, Lee Chambers.
Yeah, another Lee. Welcome, Lee.
Pleasure to be here.
How are you?
Really well, thank you.
Yeah, good. We only have Lees on normally.
Lee and Lisa.
That's it, Lee and Lisa. We like the theme, definitely. Well, welcome, Lee. It's really great to have you, and I'm really excited to have you on today. I'm going to give you your official welcome, and then we'll dive into a couple of messy questions, if that's okay, before we explore a bit more about you. So today, Lee, we're joined by you, who was not just thinking about leadership differently, but you are challenging the systems, the behaviours and the stories that have gone unquestioned for far too long. You are making allyship happen with gender equity. You, through keynote speaking, you're a UN Woman Changemaker. You're a Kavli Fellow and author of an amazing book called Momentum. That is your official welcome. So amazing start. But now I'm going to ask you, when you're down the pub, if you ever go to the pub, or the coffee shop with someone, what do you say about who you are?
So it's really interesting because even in that intro, there's about 5 different labels. If I strip it all back, I'm just fundamentally human. That's who I am.
Good.
I'm very passionate about being a father and that being part of my identity. I've been referred to as a psychologist because that's what I am academically, a business person, an entrepreneur, an author, a change maker, a troublemaker. Probably my favourite thing to be is a professional troublemaker.
I think so. I like
And I definitely say that, I think for me, it's the labels can be assigned by other people. Society can, decide what badges to give you, but actually the joy in life is exploring beyond what's expected of you, what you are labelled as, and actually finding some fluidity in a world that's trying to shape you and shoehorn you to be a certain type of person. I think exploring the whole man that I am is one of the most fun parts of living, and I think that sometimes moves beyond the labels.
Absolutely. And we're going to explore that a little bit more, because I guess our listeners would like to hear a bit more about how they find their human side and explore some of that identity, because you're right, sometimes we have all these different labels. And we have to turn up as different parts in different areas. But we're going to start with a bit of a messy question, because we said it's the messy class, as you've heard when we are our introduction, and we've been electrocuted. But I want you to tell us about a time when being an ally or trying to change the things didn't go as planned or caught you off guard. And what did you do, and what might you have learnt in that situation?
Yeah, so I think it's important to consider that allyship is a skill set. And any skill set starts with being a beginner, making some mistakes while you try and learn the fundamentals, and still making mistakes as you try and do things that are a little bit more intermediate or even advanced in that skill set. So for me, I've got a whole range of different mistakes that I've made that have been learnings, that have helped me understand. And whether that's been times when I've looked to intervene and try and challenge something, but actually done that in a clumsy way, or actually sometimes taken away people's autonomy or made them feel like I'm speaking for them, not with them. I think I'm quite passionate and I have quite a pillar of social justice. I've had that since I was a little kid. I was that child who would see another child having the toy stolen off them, and I would go and steal the toy back and give it to the child who had it in the first place. I was always the child who got noticed doing that as well, so I was the one who was trouble, even though I was trying to make things fair and equitable. And I still think to this day that as I went earlier on that allyship journey, I started to think, how can I fix things? How can I make things better? What I didn't actually do, or very quickly realised, is as a beginner, one of the most powerful things you can do is just sit and listen, especially to other people's lived experiences that give you more perspective, more understanding, allow you to ask more questions, probe a bit deeper to understand, and try not to fix everything. I think as men, we have a very action-orientated, outcome-focused way of living based on how we're shaped by society, from what we have on our t-shirts as little boys to the toys that we play with to what's expected of us is very much around build it, break it, fix it, lead it. The truth is, when it comes to learning something new, we actually have to take that step back. We need to listen, we need to observe, we need to take small, consistent actions where we will make a few mistakes. So yes, there's been plenty of messy situations and crunchy conversations that I've been in over the years, and that has involved being able to take that feedback and see the impact of my own actions, harms I might have caused, even though I was trying to do something from a place of good intent. Also understanding how sometimes my own eagerness to help has led to me kind of stepping in and interrupting people or jumping in too early into things, not having the full context or the full picture. So that's taken me also to work on my own curiosity and making sure I'm respectfully curious. And I do feel that there has been numerous times where I've had a right hash of things. But actually what you'll find in those situations is people will give you more grace if you don't double down on trying to be right, but actually try to understand. And also if you are then willing to use that as a learning opportunity and people can see that, they also give you a lot of credit for not always having to have their answer, not always have to win and have the last word, because people actually see the essence of who you are beyond the mistake. Because if we think about leadership and pretty much anything that we do in this world, you're making decisions without all the data, you have to move at speed. There are not times always to consult everyone and always have every option available. We will make mistakes, but it's not the mistake that's a challenge or an issue, it's how we respond to it. And our response to mistakes says an awful lot about us as a person. And people actually, especially as they think about how leadership is role modelled, are looking not for leaders who are perfect, but for leaders who are willing to test things, to experiment, to challenge things, and when they don't go to plan, are open, honest and humble enough to actually look at it and think, it's not gone how I intended it to, but I'm going to choose my response towards that.
Amazing. So you are a real advocate for the messy moments. I love that, and learning from those mistakes. And yet, being human, it's really part of who we are, and be able to see and fall over and pick yourself back up again. And I'm really keen, or we're really keen to explore allyship a little bit more. But before we do, you mentioned that that boy at school who wanted to put things right. How did that lead into your grounded career in psychology? I'm really interested in that first.
Yeah, so I think probably there's numerous different strands to that. I think just to pick up on your previous point, you'll know from people sat in these chairs, I know from the people that I've met on my journey, that even people who look like they've got it together have got a really messy back end. The front end can be really shiny, the back end is always messy.
Yeah.
And I obviously reflect on that journey as a young boy who was very, very principled, who was challenging to some adults because I wasn't just willing to take things as they were, and I was always wanting to ask why. Why did adults behave that way? And I think my curiosity took me into a people-focused degree because I was the one observing how adults were operating. And I'll be brutally honest, as a child sometimes I watched adults navigate in this world, how they behaved, how they interacted, what they did to each other, and just thought, you're supposed to be people who got this worked out. And to me, as a 6, 7, 8-year-old child, it looks like you don't know what you're doing. It looks like you don't know what you're talking about. And also, it looks like you're not being particularly helpful to other people. So I would observe and try and understand how people responded and reacted to things, which has always been a bit of a fascination.
Yes.
I think that led to me wanting to do both business and psychology at university. So taking those dual pathways was really helpful because I've always been interested in how businesses operate. And obviously a lot of my work today is understanding those dynamics that play out, especially around gender and interaction in workplace environments. But it's been a very, very bumpy, squiggly pathway to get into the work that I do now.
Yeah.
And if you'd have asked me, would I be doing this work now 15 years ago, early on in my career journey, I'd have told you, no, it's not for me. I'm not as interested in that as I thought I was. It's not topical or relevant to me, and it's not going to be or help me achieve the version of success that I want. 15 years later, I'm now doing something very, very different than I was 15 years ago.
Yeah.
And I think there's a real beauty in the many facets of the journey that I've had. And I've probably had 5 different careers in the 20 years I've been in the workplace.
Wow.
And I think that in itself, every one of those careers, I've taken something from, I've learnt things from, I've been challenged by, I've been tested by. And I think that means that my work is quite multidisciplinary, and there's lots of facets to it.
Yeah.
And elements of that are based off having approached things from a number of different angles over those 20 years.
Brilliant that you brought all that to culminate in where you are today. So tell us a bit more about where you are today, what your focus is, and what was, part of that career that led you to go, this is where I want to put my focus right now.
Yeah, so nowadays I run Male Allies UK, social enterprise focused on engaging men and inclusion, understanding what the barriers are to men stepping in, what the skill set looks like and how we can practice that, thinking about the benefits to men when we do, and those are quite significant, but most men don't know until they step in and start building the skill set, just how beneficial it will be, not just for people around them, but for them as well. We look at the motivators and the drivers, what makes people step into this work, what keeps people going when it gets uncomfortable, when we're faced with a lot of learning to do, but also what some of the myths and misconceptions are. We also do research with boys in schools, and we've released a whole report after speaking to over 1,000 boys up and down the country in Parliament 2 months ago.
Yes.
And that's led to a whole range of different conversations around considering the amazing work that boys are actually doing that doesn't get celebrated, but also looking at some of their challenges and fears and how we can work to address those collectively. I get a lot of joy out of doing that work. We are running the UK's first National Allyship Summit next year,
Wow.
the first Festival of the Boy in the UK next year as well, partnering with the team who run Festival of the Girl. And we work across 13 different sectors with organisations to start to look at how they close those gender gaps. They ensure that the culture is a place where people are retained, people can learn, people can perform, people can belong, and where people can reach their potential. That's how we frame inclusive environments. And I get a lot of joy out of going and doing that, sometimes at global companies, sometimes at regional organisations, sometimes supporting women's charities so that they can amplify the work that they do.
Yeah.
We do a lot of giving back, a lot of volunteering, and a lot of partnership work as well, because allyship is fundamentally around uniting, collaborating, and solidarity. And if we weren't role modelling that through partnering with other organisations, how would we be really drinking our own medicine?
Yeah, absolutely. What amazing work. And I know that you've been part of some of that, Lee.
I have, and genuinely, I went to the first anniversary, and I've followed Lee's work for a long time. A lot of people say that. I only ever hear great things, and it was palpable, the partnership, actually in the room, hearing from people, and it's a conversation that's really important. Like you're saying. So, who's doing like amazing work in this space, like that you're partnering with? Who are some of the people that you're specifically working with in this space?
Yeah, so I think if we were to think next year, the partnerships that we're building, partnering with Bloom. So Bloom is an organisation for women in marketing, advertising and communications. So they run a kind of reciprocal mentoring scheme for men and women in the industry. So we're partnering with them next year to expand that. So that's great. We partner with a whole range of different organisations, quite often women-led organisations. So we kind of got the whole gendered perspective, some LGBTQ organisations as well. And that's really helpful in terms of ensuring that our allyship is intersectional and wider. I just feel that there are lots of partnership opportunities that exist. We're partnering with industry bodies, so the Considerate Constructors scheme, to really start to look at construction and how they, through the accreditation for sites that looks at lots of different areas, from health and safety to pipelines to procurement to how they treat the contractors, partnering with them to ensure that this is actually built into those standards for sites, to make sure that the cultures are better for men and for women on those sites. We've got a whole range of different things coming again in the engineering space. We've got some stuff happening in the mining space with different bodies, and there's a real power to be able to partner with industry associations, to be able to partner with other organisations doing similar things to us, so we can amplify each other's messages. And I do feel that in this work there is no one single entity that's going to make a lot of change. Fundamentally, we come together, we've got different skill sets, different avenues into this work, and through that we can actually make more sustained change together, really role model what allyship actually is, and appreciate that collaborative and collective change is how you move systems. It's not by single heroic acts or single entities trying to change the world on their own. And just being able to do that is, I'm grateful that partners are willing to take that step in. We're able to build bridges together. There's a level of trust there, and just being able to be in a position where you can utilise the different tools, the different sources, the different networks you have as partners to create things. We've got a partnership for a gender advocacy list coming next year as well. I'm just grateful that we've got these opportunities to partner with organisations who have similar values, similar ethos, probably work in different areas or have different stakeholders, and just be able to work with them to actually make some collective change together.
Absolutely. I think collective change has to be the way forward. And I guess through your research and all those different avenues that you do, you might be asked quite a lot around what is your view of the state of the nation, and are you starting to see some progress now, having some of those partnerships in place? What are those green shoots that we can really look to?
Yeah, so I think it's really interesting, because if you look at the wider media landscape at the minute, if you look how the current societal fabric and rhetoric, and even like the social cohesion around us, it feels like it's fading away a little bit.
Yeah, it does.
People do feel that trust for politicians is declining. People feel democracy isn't as fair as it was. There's lots of backlash against work in inclusion, social, environmental spaces that there wasn't 18 months ago. And I think some people can look at that and think everything is falling apart. But then at the same time, it's really what's amplified. So for example, and Lee will know this from the research that we did in schools, but there's lots and lots about boys being lost, boys struggling, and boys finding the world really challenging, you know, fighting out against the world and wanting to burn it all down. And there are some young boys who are really disenfranchised and struggling to see what the future looks like. And there are some boys who feel that they are getting blamed for how their great-grandfathers and grandfathers navigated the world, but they're not even men yet, and it's not really very fair. But there are also lots of young boys leading on change, whether it's kind of climate change groups they've set up, working to support girls in their local area, are wanting to be part of youth clubs and advisory groups, and wanting to contribute, wanting to be part of the conversation, wanting to actually, they also feel the world is quite unfair at the minute, but they want to be part of changing it so it is fairer. And then it's just thinking about some of the conversations that I have, where you start to see some of the amazing things that have, you know, started to sprout some shoots over this past year. And part of that is things that have been watered, for, you know, seeds that have been watered for years and years. And finally, those things are starting to come to fruition. And some of the conversations I have keep you going, keep you hopeful, keep you energized, really do fill your cup up a bit. And I think when you do stuff together, you get that shared resonance. It helps things that maybe felt like a really big problem feel a little bit more like you're able to tackle them.
Yes.
Because the more of you that come together, the problem doesn't get any bigger, but your collective group of change does. And I think that's, again, in a world where sometimes leaders think that they have to do it on their own, or they have to be the one that sets the drumbeat, or that they have to be the one who leads the charge. Actually, it's so powerful when you just bring people alongside you and do that in a collective way. Instead of leading from the front, lead collectively, arm in arm. It's really hard for people to break those bonds if you do lead arm in arm. It's very easy to pick people off if people are leading in a singular file from the front. So yeah, I mean, we've got to be honest about certain things in the world. The way that some leaders are behaving is simply not acceptable. Some of the rights that people are having removed in different parts of the world, there's no silver lining to make that seem any better than it is, because it's just not. And the way that some people are being treated in society is very problematic, and we can't just sit here and say, oh yeah, it'll just get better, without anything happening. We're all part of that collective change. We can all be part of driving a more inclusive and safer nation. There's something every single one of us can do, no matter what your position. But one of the biggest things we can do is stop fueling division and start having the dialogue that we need. Start to think about the commonalities that we share. Start to realise that fearing difference is a great way to make you feel lonely, disconnected and fragmented from other people. And actually difference is our advantage as a species, but only when we celebrate and embrace it and let it be, and actually realise that difference is something when we were children we were really curious about. Why are you like that? Why is your mum like that? Why do you do it that way? Why do you like that colour? We were curious. We've lost that as adults. We need to embrace that curiosity and go and explore the fluid middle rather than standing at the poles scared about what the future will bring.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it seems to me that that's of course the time. So, you know, from I guess from a psychological point of view, where, you know, we tend to navigate to people that are like us, we feel safe in those groups. I'm definitely an advocate of diversity and diversity of thought and experience. Again, who's been someone in the last 12 months that you've really admired, that's kind of stood up with you, or in this space, or that you've seen from afar that's done similar things?
Yeah, that's a really good question, Lee. Obviously what you're referring to in terms of affinity bias, you know, we all have that as humans. If we meet someone who feels very, very close to us, maybe they grew up in the same place, you've got those stories of what it used to be like, the nightclubs, the places to hang out, you know, the things that you did. Instant. Went to the same university, you'll have stories. Got similar hobbies, you'll have lots of crossover. Go to holidays in the same place. Wow, nostalgia. So powerful. The truth is, with the world being quite uncertain at the minute, feeling quite volatile and unpredictable, people's drive to want that certainty, and people who feel familiar and have that nostalgic anchor, is actually really powerful. the current climate means that people are starting to shift back to things that they feel used to work and do feel safer. And that means that people who are willing to step in and have those challenging conversations are becoming a bit rarer, but actually becoming more valuable in doing so. When I think about like people in my space who are doing it, I think it's really important that there are some people in my space who I admire, because it's very easy to be principled and moral with kind of diversity and inclusion work. But we've got to be quite honest that over the past 5 years, there's been poor practice. There's been things that have been rushed. Some businesses have done things without the foundations, but they've built houses that are very easy to blow over. There has been lots of reactive and some quite performative things that have happened to say that we're doing this, but then the lived reality of people hasn't changed within the business. So the people that I kind of admire are not dissimilar to me in actually being willing to be honest about the situation that we're currently in. Being honest that, having lots of nice flags and food and parties and fun and shiny awards doesn't actually change cultures in businesses. It's the interventions, the initiatives, and things that actually are measurable and have a reason to exist and are actively working to change culture over time and transform how people operate. That's the work. It's not very glamorous. It doesn't make for good social media campaigns, and it's not a shiny glass trophy on a wall, but it's where the work is. And I admire the people who are actually doing that work, because quite often they're not shouting about it. Yeah. They're actually in the rooms doing it. There are a whole range of people. I could throw names out for people who are doing that work. I think someone who I kind of really admire in the space is Dr. Jonathan Ashong-Lamptey, and he does a lot around just ensuring that we look at inclusion from an evidence-based perspective. Yes. Rob Briner as well is very much focused on that wider workplace structures of making sure that interventions are evidence-based, whether that's around inclusion, well-being, or people engagement. And those are people where, I have a lot of respect for those individuals who are looking to bring this back to what it should be. Because there are people who are almost blind and not accepting that we have to evolve what we do. Yes. And we have to ensure that it's relevant for the world today and actually making change for people. But then there are other people who are very strategically and in a very coordinated way trying to attack all these things. Yes. Trying to attack particular communities, trying to really fragment and divide people, and then apportion blame to certain groups in society. Because it's much easier to take a group of disenfranchised people and say it's that group's fault than it is to actually showcase that it's a system that's extracting and suppressing all of us. Yes. The system doesn't have a face, but groups of people do. And I'm very, very passionate that we can use our role as an activist in a way that works for us. Some of us, from an activist perspective, are more on the front lines, more vocal, more willing to challenge. But some of us are more systems tinkerers behind the scenes, changing some systems, dismantling some structures. And I just fundamentally feel that, for me, people who are willing to go into the middle and explore, that takes courage. There's moral courage there in a world where people are being dragged to the polls by things like social media as a polarisation engine. It's designed to pull people's attention. Absolutely. And it's designed to create division. The people who are willing to bring groups of people into the middle, people who don't agree, people who don't have the same belief, and create a space to explore that. They're our modern day freedom fighters. They're our pirates. They're people who are making that happen. And I get a lot of joy out of spending time with those people, because again, it's not about being right, it's about giving people space to explore where they're at and how they can think about how they can explore themselves on the journey, because self-awareness is incredibly powerful. And I think in many ways, if we can combine self-awareness with courage, that's when we get authenticity and genuine people starting to understand who they are and showing up as who they are.
That fantastic work, Annie. You can really see your passion in there. And I think something that you said right at the beginning, I guess, that was part of you, that speaking up for others, and being in that activist space for change, particularly around gender equity and allyship, is a fine line, because you don't want to be seen as speaking on behalf, you know, so that allyship without that ego, and you know, it's not about men saving the day. And I think that's part of what you put onto your, you know, your website and those things. So how do you do that balance? How do you get that right, you know, to make sure that the people that you're involved in and how you come across really treads that very fine line?
Yeah, so again, Lisa, it's a skill set to build. So one of the core skills of allyship is positioning, and it's understanding in what situations do you step forward to challenge, to intervene, to speak up about things. When do you step to the side and partner, sponsor, amplify other people's work in partnership, and think about how you step to the side also to take feedback. And when do you step back? Step back to yield the space, amplify the voices of others, bring other people into the space that you've previously occupied, make sure that people are credited, and, you know, really speak about them when they're not in rooms. And it's learning where to position yourself in those situations. Now, the truth is that takes time. It's taken me time. I wasn't particularly vocal, and I spent years listening, understanding, doing my masters before I actually started being actively out there vocal. I think in this very kind of, in this volatile world where social media is a very, very shallow place, it's very hard to get depth, it's very hard to get nuance in 3,000 characters. It just isn't. If people start on social media, it can feel really quite hard because there's so much polarization. They are pushed towards people who deeply resonate, but then they are also pushed to people who feel very strongly against it. And then they get challenged from a number of different angles. It's very hard as well to learn these skills on social media because it is so shallow. There is no learning space. People will either tell you you're amazing and feed your ego, or they'll tell you you're terrible and get you angry and upset because you're trying to help, but they're telling you you're doing it all wrong. They're telling you you're doing this. They're telling you you shouldn't do that. And it's very difficult to learn because social media is full of teachers, absolutely full of people who want to teach you that what you're doing is amazing or what you're doing is terrible. And very, very few objective people who will say, understand the intention, see what you're trying to do, this could have been a little bit better, think about this for next time, think about how that's framed. And the truth is, this work isn't about being an activist on social media. It's about fundamentally meeting people where they're at, getting people to explore their perspectives, their beliefs, widening their opportunity to expand upon themselves. It's about challenging systems and gradually working to make those systems, the resistance and friction that people face in those systems, less. The truth is, that's the work. And then through the work you build the skills, and by actually doing the work, it allows you to then speak about the work rather than censoring yourself. You might talk about mistakes you've made, things you've learnt on the journey, things you've seen and suddenly realised, and then it becomes a very different conversation rather than you being this hero or a saviour, because allyship isn't a badge, it's not a certificate, it's a practice, it's a lifelong pursuit, it's a learning journey, it's an opportunity to widen your own, in many ways, intelligence about how the world is and how other people live. And I do feel that, it can feel quite scary to step in. Fear is the biggest barrier when we speak to men in our research, but actually if we start with a small, consistent little actions in our everyday lives, we gradually build the skill, and we don't even need to go on social media and talk about it. I mean, that some people will feel more confident doing that over time. Some people will want to be a bit more of a front foot activist. Not everyone has to be. It's about thinking about the personality that you have, the skills that you have, and do you want to be in that position? Because what we do find is some people start this journey on social media and then find themselves in a hot water, find themselves feeling particularly unhappy at how they're being treated or perceived. And actually, the truth is, it's a bit like an iceberg. The few visible things that we see in gender equality, we tend to forget so much happens underneath the iceberg, underneath the scenes, so many things that happen that don't get seen, that don't get talked about, don't get amplified, but actually there's so much under the iceberg. And I reflect back and think it took me years to build the base, the foundation of that iceberg, but it was helpful that I'd been through a range of adversity before that, because that adversity also made me more humble, more grateful, more willing to learn, and better at listening.
Yeah, great backstory.
And just on that, I think this is part of this podcast, right? In terms of getting to know the people that are doing this work in various guises of leadership, because, like you're saying there's a polished version, and then there's a more real version. And it seems to me that in the world of social media, we don't give space and time, because we give ourselves the badge, don't we? And you talk about this far better than me, that we're always busy.
Yeah.
You know, so by investing time to get to know the principles, the MO, it's easier then to be working at greater depth. You know, building up the skill, and I think that's so important, as you've said. The other part I think that I've loved what you've said there is around the research. You know, it's really easy to have an opinion, but by research is way more powerful, and it's just a smarter way to approach things, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I would say, Lee, that there's a lot of research out there. In fact, I could cherry pick existing research to pretty much make any point I wanted. It's about also, in this world where people are using AI and then skimming headlines off the top, where people look at the media and they take the headline, not even read the story, never mind the sources, that actually the advantage for people in the future is those who are willing to go deep, but also willing to be critical about what research exists, who funded it, where's it come from. Like everyone, I hate to say it, but we need to have a level of digital literacy in the world as it is today. And we also need to have a level of literacy around sources of information. There's so much misinformation out there, and even things that look really credible, when you dig into the detail, and I'm that annoying person who'll scroll back to the appendices at the back and look, and like, sample size of 23 people. Okay, it's a little bit small. Oh, we struggle to repeat this study. Yeah. And it's just that little bit of, because it's so, you know, when people are busy and when they perceive that they're busy, what they won't do is spend 2 minutes just checking the sources. It's a really simple thing. We're taught by universities to do that, but then we go out into the world and we're like, oh, we just do that at university. In a world where there are now leaders who have taken decisions based on a headline that they've seen, or a headline that someone else has seen that they've told them, and they've not got the depth or the nuance or the context, and then there ends up being consequences for those leaders. It's really important to just spend that little bit of time and little bit of critical thinking skill to just ensure, because we're talking about 2 minutes here. When people tell me that it's not a priority or I'm really busy, I kind of break it down and say, get your mobile phone out your pocket. Tell me how much screen time you've used last week. Tell me you've not got 2 minutes. Because everyone has 2 minutes. And sometimes it's about really rethinking where those priorities lie. I mean, comically, priorities isn't even a word, because it was always a singular priority, just one thing. Now we've got priorities, so many. But actually, fundamentally, we do need to be critical in how we navigate this world, because if you're not critical and you're not a little bit thinking about the status quo and thinking, yeah, but why is it like this? Like, it comes down to being critical but also being curious. Combine those two things and you will navigate the world differently. You will question things and you will learn from questioning and challenging things around you.
I totally take your point. You're taking me back to my postgrad degree with the critical thinking, definitely. But leaders have got a lot on the plate.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it is so fast paced. There's a lot. It seems to me there's more than ever to cover in the role of a leader or as a manager. The fact that people can follow you, can trust your work, knowing you're doing that level of detail, then springs to my mind that actually it's having good sources of information that you trust, that you are embellished in, that you know there's the rigour that help make other people's lives simpler for leaders.
Yeah, and I think that every leader has to try and create an ecosystem of trusted information around them, but still be critical. Like, I don't want a leader to, for example, read my works, follow me on social media, and never think, actually, I don't agree with that. Because what I put out is to make people think.
Yeah.
It's not to make people agree. It's not to enlighten them to some new plane of being. It's actually designed to make them think. They should read it and think, I agree with that bit. I'm not sure about that bit. I don't agree with that bit.
And the bit and I've seen you work, right, so I know that's the case. I think it's the trusted element I'm talking about then.
Yeah.
So to know that actually if they follow you, they know that you'll be into research, they'll know you will have gone into the depth. It's knowing that you've checked the sources, it's that. And then they can make an informed decision, actually.
Yeah.
And think about how does that apply to their context and their world.
Yeah, and I agree. We are in a low trust society. And having trusted sources of information is really important. And we see with young people, for example, trust is built by resonance in messaging, which means we need to be critical of who we trust, because our trust is built off things like affinity bias. We are more likely to trust someone who is like us. So it's really, really important that we find trusted sources of information, but we're also critical of what we trust more easily. And I think that's that importance is there definitely for leaders, because of historically leaders' ability to listen to voices that are closer in proximity to them. And I think it's a fine balance, because, for example, now young people will trust a source of information if that individual has been referred to by another influencer that they have followed for years and really deeply trust, even if it's absolute nonsense. So sometimes that trust is inferred, and sometimes people trust someone because they've got a doctor in front of their name. Sometimes people trust someone because they've got 1 million followers on social media. And sometimes I look at these things and I think, how can anyone believe that? But my job is to actually think, how has that person taken that away and then gone and done that? And you realise that people's trust is built in different ways. And sometimes it's about what's engaging more than what's rigorous. That's one of the biggest challenges I've got with social media, is it's often about followership, about generating emotion, about generating polarity, pulling people's attention. It's not about rigorous